Welcome to the Be Dadly podcast, where we discuss all things dadly, from being an entrepreneur while caring for toddlers to raising screenagers and talking the birds and the bees. We're here to help you traverse the vast and dynamic landscape of fatherhood. Enjoy practical advice, lots of puns, and even a few heart-touching moments.
And the dad jokes are pretty good too.
And now your host, Brandon Jones.
So, just like that, we're back, folks. Welcome back to the Be Dadly podcast. I am Brandon Jones, your host. Today's guest is the author of the Miracle Morning series, including The Miracle Morning and The Miracle Equation. He's also the host of the Achieve Your Goals podcast. He's an international keynote speaker who has spoken to the largest companies and schools around the world. He is America's most in-demand keynote speakers. He's been featured on ABC, NBC, Fox, and the list goes on and on. He was in a horrific car accident at the age of 20 that literally tore his car in half. He was dead for a full 6 minutes and then died 2 more times in the hospital. His injuries were so severe that he was told that he may never walk again. Through his incredible mindset, focus, and sheer will, he took his very first steps 3 weeks later. His story was so inspirational that it became the cornerstone for his life's work. He later went on to achieve extraordinary results with a morning ritual he calls My Miracle Morning. This ritual has changed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, possibly even millions at this point, including my very own. He's even faced and beat a very rare and aggressive form of cancer that has a 20 to 30% survival rate. He once again used his mindset, his focus, and his trained optimism to overcome this enormous challenge. This guest has an absolutely incredible degree of mental and emotional resilience. He inspires the world through his extraordinary mindset and practical advice. I feel incredibly honored and privileged to welcome the one and only Hal Elrod. Hal, thank you so much for being here and doing this, brother.
Brandon, thank you, man. There was a lot of, you were reading the intro and I was like, wait, is that my old intro? But then there was new parts and I'm like, wow, you really like customized your own intro for me. So thank you for putting the extra time in, man. I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. The thing is, there's so many parts to your story. I mean, there's the tragedy of your sister. There's the car accident. There's the cancer, but there's also the 2008 crash. There's all these different parts that you have really had to overcome. And I'm so excited to get into that with these guys today and to talk about how important, for example, our belief system is, or how important these different things are that you've applied to overcome these enormous challenges that for many people, it's a make or break kind of thing. I mean, it can really just take so many of us out. And so I find your story incredibly inspiring, and it is so vast and dynamic because there are so many parts that you've overcome, and it was like, do I want to list everywhere he's been featured on? Because it would be an enormous, it would be such a long list. How does that feel, by the way, to be an international keynote speaker, to have your book literally translated to so many languages and have this kind of impact with people? What does that feel like viscerally?
Yeah, that is a great question. It's funny. And I just answered that. I was actually, the timing of this interview is perfect. I was just, I gave the opening keynote at the Front Row Dads live event on Saturday, just a few days ago.
Yeah. John Vroman. Yeah.
And so I'm totally in the dad space right now, as I was just connecting with, 100 other dads for 2 days and prepared a speech and everything. And then, but one of my friends in the group, Les McDaniel, he asked me that question. We went out to dinner one of the nights and he asked me, and, my answer to that, I almost am insecure to give it because I'm not sure how it comes across or how people receive it. But when I was in my 20s, I started learning. It was after my car accident. And I think, I don't remember the first book that I read. I think it was The Power of Now, but I basically started studying enlightenment. And then I read Andrew Cohen, who wrote the book Living Enlightenment. I wrote Ken Wilber, who wrote The Theory of Everything. And if you've ever read Ken Wilber, he's really hard to wrap your head around. Like he's not a, friendly, he writes at like a PhD level and beyond. He's hard to digest. But anyway, right. I started studying enlightenment and I started studying the ego. Mm-hmm. And, the ego is there's the Freudian ego, the ego is depending on what school of thought, there's different ways to look at it. Mm-hmm. And so the way that I identified it was, I don't want to be driven by my ego, where I live my life so either for the approval of others, to impress other people, like kind of ego in that context. Like when we call someone egotistical, I was like, I don't want to be driven by my ego in that way. So I started, they talked about in these books, like dissolving the ego. And the one that needs praise, that needs anything to be fulfilled. In fact, my motto for a lot of years was need nothing, enjoy everything, love all. Right. So I want to be from a place where I don't need anything outside of myself to feel whole and fulfilled. I don't need somebody else's opinion, praise. I don't need success, none of that. Right. And this is aspirational. I'm not saying I'm perfect at this, but when I was 20, so it was 20 years ago, I started on this journey and then enjoy everything, which is like, I want to enjoy every moment of my life, even the difficult and painful ones. I want to find joy in every moment. And I want to love all. I want to love every person. I want to, even my enemies, so to speak, right? I want to love every aspect of this one life we've been blessed to live. And so the point of that is I went so hard into dissolving my ego and not allowing myself to be driven by it that I lost it. And so what I mean is, like, to a fault, where when you ask me, how does it feel? I don't know. Like, I'm so disconnected from feeling, and again, to a fault. Like, I'm not saying this is the right way, because I would love to be able to feel it at a deeper level. There's some other layers to that. And I'm sorry, this is a very convoluted, long answer.
That's okay.
But you mentioned the tragedy with my sister. She died when I was 8 years old, and she was just a baby. I woke up to the sound of my mother screaming, and my 18-month-old sister, just a year and a half, was dead in my mother's arms. And it was a pivotal moment in my life where I decided to find the positive. And I think that as an 8-year-old, I couldn't handle the emotions that were coming up. I think it was confusing, and I didn't understand why my dad was crying. I never saw my dad cry. And I think that I flipped a switch, and I was like, hey, the way I announced to my friends that my sister died is I said, guys, do you know where Amory is? They said, where? I said, she's in heaven. Isn't that great? I've heard heaven's like the best place ever. So I think that I realized, if I just focus on the positive, I don't have to feel painful emotions. And so in the last few years, I've really done a lot of work to try to understand this, because my wife's like, you're like a robot, like no matter what happens, you're just okay with it. And so it's like, yes, that's a superpower that I can be at peace and, zen with everything, but it's also, it's a challenge to develop empathy and develop, and they say, like, if you can't feel pain, you're limited in how much pleasure you can feel. Right. And so again, this is a very loaded answer, but it's the real authentic answer that I feel very like I'm grateful. I'm at peace. But there is no sense of, like, here's the best example I can give you. Before I did this work on ego, when I was younger, I would have been like, dude, if I changed millions of lives, that would be amazing. I would, right? Like, my ego would be so fueled by that accomplishment or acknowledgement or praise or whatever. And now there's just like, I kind of wish I could feel better about it,
Right.
But I do think that even though the emotion is maybe limited around that, it is a deep sense of purpose that, like, it's a spiritual purpose that drives me every day, that I'm driven to help as many people as I possibly can. I just don't know if I'm driven by the ego or more driven by, by God, by just, humanity, by this bigger mission of wanting to help my fellow humans, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes total sense. And I get how your brain is so trained to see that silver lining. It's so trained to say, well, challenges build character, challenges create opportunity, challenges are a gift, right? And it's not to be just pushed away or shamed, or like, it's meant to be used. We've got to use these challenges and not try to move away from them, but move through them. And so along with that comes also this thing where it's like, oh, that's not negative. Oh, I can accept that, and then other people around you are like, dude, we got to care about that. You can't just move on past that. Like, I'm hearing that a little bit, like in a relationship, it's like, well, hold on a sec, you're such a robot. You're so, and I can see how
all you are is positive. Like,
right. Yeah. And it reminds me of the virtuous mean that, I've been studying the stoicism, and it's like, too much of a good thing is too much. right? Like there really is such a thing. And it sounds like in some ways you're now getting to this level where you're wrestling a little bit with that, which is a whole nother plane, because most of us are wrestling with the underbelly of the ego. You're like trying to be like, how can I get my ego a little bit more involved? I've almost, completely incinerated him. How do I get him involved? And what's funny is I've studied Kabbalah for a little bit, and they were talking about how the ego is the challenger. It's meant to challenge you. And in their mindset, it goes through their philosophy. If you will, it grows in proportion to the spirit. So the ego grows in proportion to the spirit. It will always grow to kind of come up to that next level and challenge you. And I always thought, man, what is the Dalai Lama's ego like? You know what I mean? Like he's got to constantly surrender that. He's got everywhere he goes, there's just enormous amounts of people that you're just wanting to kiss his feet and, be with him. And what's that like to just surrender that? So that's really interesting that you can get to a point where you surrendered it so much. Like, how can I integrate it more into me?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. No, and overall, like I think I'm grateful that I being at this place, meaning like I'm able to make the work that I do be really pure in terms of the purpose. Right. So, I think a lot of people say, and I feel like it's almost egotistical for me to say this, but I don't mean it this way, right? But a lot of people will say like, I just want to help people. I want to change the world, right? But really deep down, they're driven by their ego.
Right. Or they want to be recognized. Right.
Totally. Yeah. And for me, and to be clear, like if somebody tells me, like whenever I go speak at an event, like at this Front Row Dads event, I had probably at least 10 guys come up and go, dude, I listened to your podcast, or I read the Miracle Morning. Like, you don't know this, but you're my mentor from afar. Right. Like that fills my heart. Like that feels good. And I'm grateful for that. But it's very, it's just a very like, there is no like, oh, I'm the man, or, that kind of thing.
That's awesome. I love that purity in you. And, we, even before we got on the recording, I kind of shared with you, you've actually greatly impacted my life. And I wasn't even quite sure that it was you. And what I mean by that is that, I joined Optimize with Brian Johnson, which I highly recommend. Any of you, this is a plug. I don't have any affiliation. I don't get anything for this, but Heroic is an app, and you can download this app. It has incredible wisdom inside of it. But Brian Johnson was on your documentary, and in the app, he actually has a portion of like some of his coaching classes where he teaches, a lot of the philosophies and wisdom coming from people like yourself. And one of them was the morning ritual. And I started this morning ritual and I traded my night owl ritual, which was a waste of time. And I invested that time. I always like to say I was spending time at night, but I invested it. I moved away from spending the time at night and investing it in the morning. And it had such a profound effect on my life. It's making me more clear. I feel like I talk about like baking the cake in the morning. The rest of the day is icing. Like I have baked my cake.
I like that. That's a great, I got to borrow that.
You can borrow that every day that I get that stuff done. I'm like, my cake is good. Everything from here on out is icing and sprinkles, baby. Like, let's go, so it's such a cool experience. And so I want to thank you personally. We're going to get into what some of those rituals are. But I just want to tell you, thank you, man. You really have made an impact on my family's life, and your work is beautiful. It truly is. And it really is it's got a miracle effect. It really does. It has that kind of like, it's hard to put your finger on how powerful it is. It's subtle and it's so important.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I really do believe, I wrote the Miracle Morning 10 years ago. The 10-year anniversary actually is coming up on Monday, like in 4 days. Of the publishing date. It took me 3 years to write the book though. So I've been working on it, long before, but I've heard from, we have, I think 60,000 reviews online for the book in one form, another audiobook, whatever it is. And I hear from people all the time that that I started the Miracle Morning and quickly these amazing miracles, like this thing happened and this thing happened. And I had the best week in my sales career. And in fact, Robert Kiyosaki, author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he read the Miracle Morning 3 times, and it may be more since then, but I got an email a few years ago from his assistant. She said, "Hey, Robert has read the Miracle Morning 3 times." And my jaw dropped because I'm like, dude, wait, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that's like one of my favorite books.
Right.
And he's read your Miracle Morning book 3 times. He does the practice almost every single day. And it's changed his life. And he wants to interview you on Rich Dad Radio. And I was like, dude, this is crazy. And so cool. I go on, I do the interview. And at the end of the interview, Robert said, and I know we're going to get into what the Miracle Morning is, but it's these 6 practices that are organized in an acronym, which is the SAVERS, SAVERS, silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing, those 6 practices. And Robert, he said this, he said, Hal, before I read the Miracle Morning, he said, I could have told you that every successful person on the planet swears by at least one of those 6 practices. Maybe they do 2 or 3. He said, but I've never met anyone that did all 6. And he said, I started doing all 6 now. And he said, over the last few weeks, I'm experiencing miracles. He said, you named it correctly. You know, any one of these will change your life. But when you do all 6, you will see miracles in your life. And I was like, Robert, can I quote that? Like, that is, you know, you said it better than I ever have. And anyway, so yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. And I experience it each day by hearing from other people and their, you know, the impact it's made on them.
Yeah, it's remarkably practical. It's not too hard to do. And it sets a cornerstone. It really sets a cornerstone for how you're going to operate in your day. So I'm going to get into some of these great questions. So you've had to overcome a number of extraordinary challenges. What do you believe has been the biggest key to your success?
Yeah, the biggest key to success in terms of handling adversity, right? So that's all answered in that context. When I was 19, I started in sales. So I was a radio DJ. That was my dream. I was on my second radio station, 97.1 FM in Central California. I was living the dream. But I wasn't making much money. I was a new radio DJ. You're making like, $8 an hour back then, or $10 an hour or something. And I was DJing midnight to 6 a.m. because I was the new guy at the station. So you get the grunt shift, Right. So, but still I was living the dream, man. I was on cloud 9. Right. And my friends would call at midnight and be like, dude, I'm on a date. Can you dedicate a song to me and this girl? Right. So it was a blast. Nice. But my buddy introduced me to, he was working at Cutco Cutlery. Brandon, you familiar with Cutco kitchen knives?
Absolutely.
So I'm like, dude, I'm not a salesman.
Right.
He ends up convincing me that, it's a great product. It sells itself. It's commissioned. So you can actually make, as much money as you were willing to work for. And I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And so I started in Cutco, and in my first 10 days, I broke the 50-year-old company record. I sold $15,000 of kitchen knives in 10 days.
Amazing.
And it was a real breakthrough because my whole life I was really mediocre. Like I wasn't an achiever. People growing up that like, dude, they get, they're straight A students. They're like captain of the varsity football team or basketball or like whatever. Like they're great at everything that they do, right? They're charismatic. They're good athletes. They're popular, you name it, right? Like I wasn't that kid. I didn't get good grades. I was always in trouble. I didn't play any sports. And when I was in Cutco, I finally was like, dude, I'm tired of settling for mediocrity in my life. Like I'm tired. Like I want to be successful, And so on the second day of training, I decided I went to my manager. I said, I want to break the all-time company record. And he challenged me. He said, Hal, I hear that every week and nobody does it. I was like, oh, okay. He's like, you have to work harder than you've ever worked in your life for those, it's 10 days. But you've got to dedicate yourself to this, morning till night. And if you give it everything you have, you can, I believe that you can break the record and I'll help you, but you got to give it your all. And I was like, and again, never being a hard worker, I'm like, okay. Like I didn't know it was going to take that much work. Shoot. And then he taught me a really, really important lesson. And this is kind of what I'm going to share right now. It's kind of 2 sides to the success coin, if you will, right? He said, Hal, when you set a major goal, when you go after something really big and really meaningful, life or the universe, it will test you. And he said, sales is a microcosm for life, but he said, you're going to experience more adversity than the average person does. For example, he said, the average person occasionally experiences rejection. You're going to experience it every single day, multiple times a day. And that requires a certain level of emotional resilience, emotional intelligence, right? He said, the average person occasionally experiences failure. You're going to experience it every single day, multiple times a day, right? And he said, you need a strategy, a tool, if you will, to handle adversity. And he said, he taught me this thing called the 5-minute rule. And ever since then, I've been teaching this in my keynote for, in my books for 20 years, paying this lesson forward. It's one of the most important lessons I've ever learned. And he said this, he said, when something goes wrong, most people dwell on it and they wish it were different. They resist reality. They wish it didn't happen. And he said, a lot of people are still suffering over things that happened, not just earlier in the day or last week, but from their childhood. Right? They're still resisting reality, going, I didn't deserve it. It wasn't fair. That shouldn't have happened. I am the way that I am because of the past, right? And so he taught us the 5-minute rule. He said, when something goes wrong, when you get rejected, someone treats you poorly, you fail at something, whatever it is, he said, set your timer for 5 minutes and give yourself 5 minutes to feel all of your emotions fully. Don't suppress them at all. Bitch, moan, complain, cry, scream, punch a wall or a pillow, whatever. Feel your emotions fully. He said, but understand that there is no value in dwelling on painful emotions for an extended period of time. So when the timer goes off after 5 minutes and you gave yourself a chance to feel the emotions, say 3 very powerful words: can't change it. It's a simple acknowledgement. I can't change what happened 5 minutes ago or 5 days or 5 months or 5 decades, right? Whatever, I can't change it. So right now I'm left with I have 2 choices, or 1 choice, 2 options. Number 1, I can continue to resist reality and wish this didn't happen and say it's unfair and be miserable and cause myself emotional pain, or I can acknowledge that I can't change it. I can accept it fully. Doesn't mean I'm happy about it. Much more powerful than that, I'm at peace with it. Happiness is an emotion that's fleeting. You could be happy 1 minute, new information, you get a phone call, now you're upset, you're miserable. But when you live in a state of unconditional acceptance for life exactly as it is, and not wishing unchangeable aspects of your life, which would be anything that's happened before this moment, right? Whether it's 5 minutes or 5 decades, I can't change it. So my choice is I can either be miserable or I can be completely at peace and focus all of my energy on what I can change. And so I was taught that. And I was thinking what some people might be thinking, which is, dude, 5 minutes is not enough time. Like, you expect me to get over something in 5 minutes? Because we've been conditioned to stay upset over something we can't change for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, a lot of these things we look back and just the memory of something that was unpleasant or painful or difficult, just the memory triggers that emotional response. Oh, absolutely. I'm so mad. I'm so upset. Every time I think about that, I'm upset. It's like, dude, it's not happening anymore. You're causing suffering for yourself because you're resisting the reality that happened rather than accepting that reality and being at peace. Mm-hmm. And so the first time I had a woman cancel her appointment when I was in Cutco out, after like my first day. And I'm like, oh gosh, no, I needed that appointment. And then I'm like, okay, wait a minute, 5-minute rule. And I set the timer for 5 minutes. And I can remember pacing around my apartment. I was 19 years old. And I'm like, oh, this is such BS. I can't believe she canceled. How could she do that? What a, right? And the timer goes off after 5 minutes. And I go, dude, I'm still I'm not upset just because a timer went off. I'm still upset. And so I set the timer again. And I did it a few times. And finally, I kind of was like, every time the timer went off, I got more and more accepting of what I can't change. But here's the magic, Brandon. After about 3 weeks, it might have been less than that. Maybe it was 1 week. I don't remember the exact time frame, but I can picture myself. It was the last day of the week. It was like 9 o'clock at night on a Sunday. And I had to turn orders in the next morning at 8 a.m. for the week. And the order I had that earlier that evening put me over my goal for the week. So I was like so excited. It was a big order. And she calls me after 9 and she goes, hey, my husband just came home. He was really upset that I bought those knives that I'm asking him. I need to cancel my order. And I was like, no. And I tried to kind of, ask her questions, see if I could talk her into keeping it. And, and maybe I could show it to her husband, whatever. It was lost the order. So So that was way worse than a week earlier when I just lost the appointment for somebody else, right? Now I lost the order that put me over my goal for the week. And I set my timer 5 minutes. I was like, dude, I can't believe this. Like, why would she cancel? She totally loved those knives. Man, what am I going to do, man? I guess, I got to make more calls. I don't know. And I picked up my phone and looked at the timer, and I had 4 minutes and 32 seconds left. And I started to set the phone down, and then I'm like, well, wait a minute. What's the value in me being upset for the next 4.5 minutes when I could just accept it now, say, can't change it, accept it now, be at peace, and move on. And that was one of the most profound defining moments in my life, Brandon, because I went, oh, I only have to feel emotional pain for as long as I'm not willing to accept my reality exactly as it is. And once I get to that place of accepting my reality, whether it takes 5 minutes or 5 seconds, I am completely in control of whether I'm upset and feeling painful, detrimental emotions that aren't serving me, right? I mean, every emotion serves you, but not beyond like acknowledging it, learning from it, and moving on, right? It's like, oh, I'm angry. Why am I angry? Oh, because this person violated my trust. You know what? They've done that repeatedly. So I'm going to actually limit my time. I'm not going to engage with that person anymore. I cannot trust them. They've done this repeatedly. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I accept it. I'm moving on. So every emotion serves a purpose, but it only takes you 30 seconds, or maybe 5 minutes or whatever, to ask yourself, what is this emotion telling me? What's the value I can extract from that feeling? Awesome. I'm extracting it. Now I'm accepting my reality exactly as it is, because the only other alternative is be miserable, and I'm moving on. That's the greatest lesson I learned, because when I came out of the coma and I was told I would never walk again. Now it took me more than 5 minutes. It probably took me a few days to like process that I'm going to be in a wheelchair the rest of my life. But I got over it so fast. I accepted it so fast that the doctors thought I was in denial. They thought I was delusional, and they thought I couldn't accept it. So I was just pretending it didn't happen when the opposite was true. No, I know it happened. But if I'm in a wheelchair the rest of my life, I told this to my dad. I said, Dad, I'll be the happiest, most grateful person that you've ever seen in a wheelchair. Because if I'm in a wheelchair and I can't change it, I refuse to let that determine my emotional well-being. I will be happy because I can be. I have that choice. And we always have that choice. And when I got cancer and I was told I was most likely going to die, I went, well, you know what? I'm not going to accept that. I'm going to live. But I'm going to be the happiest, most grateful I've ever been while I endure 650 hours of chemotherapy that I did, the most difficult time in my life. And we've been conditioned to think that when bad things happen, I feel bad. And when good things happen, I feel good. And what I'm offering you is a new paradigm where no matter what happens, how about you choose how you feel? And the biggest thing that prevents us from doing that is our resistance to reality, which we do unconsciously. But now that you're consciously aware that you can set your timer for 5 minutes, no matter what, it could be you're in a car accident, or you go bankrupt, or, you lose a loved one, or whatever. And by the way, take the time you need to grieve, right? 5 minutes is arbitrary. You take 5 days or depending on what the adversity is. But now you elevate your consciousness to be aware that, oh, I'm in control. And I can dwell on this emotional state, resisting reality, being upset or sad, as long as I feel like that is serving me and it's healthy. But now I know that I don't feel painful emotions because of anything outside of me. It's based on my internal response. I either accept it or I resist it. If I resist it, I feel pain. If I accept it, I'm at peace. Those are my 2 options. Those are your 2 options in every instance in your life. That's the greatest lesson I learned. And to this day, it allows me to be at peace with all things I can't change.
Absolutely beautiful. And it's so fine. We've heard about Nelson Mandela. We've heard about these different people who have Viktor Frankl, who have set in enormous pain the burden of and the suffering, some of the worst suffering that a human being can go through, much like yourself with cancer, an accident where you're told you can't walk again, you may be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. And to find yourself being able to I fully accept that that is my reality. I will not accept that I'm going to make it the story that allows me to be painfully, woe is me for the rest of my life. I will not allow that to happen. I accept this, but I can control how I move forward, what I do. And I love this. Can't change it. I mean, just can't change it. That's already happened. There's nothing I can do to go back there. I remember I was in a barber shop one time getting a haircut by this great woman, and she was telling me about her kids, because I'm a dad, and we're talking about kids, and she says, I have a daughter that can make a stubbed toe last all day. And I remember, man, that's a good way to put it. She's like, I mean, she can stub her toe and it'll be for the rest of the day. It's all she talks about. Is their friend, and I was like, man, you make a stubbed toe last all day. That is just some great practical wisdom. It's like, hey, it was a stub toe. I got to move on. And sometimes it's not a stub toe. Sometimes it's as big as, man, you might not walk again. But imagine if you had the emotional resilience to be able to get to a point where you can accept that and say, I can still be happy. I will be the happiest person. I love that. I will be the happiest person in a wheelchair, the most grateful person you've ever met in a wheelchair. Beautiful, man. Absolutely beautiful. So you encourage people to implement these 6 of what are they called? I remember you said the 6 of the most timeless personal growth practices: silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. And you use that great acronym SAVERS, right? I mean, it's like a lifesaver, literally: silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. Why are these practices so important?
So this all started in 2007 when the US economy started to crash. And I was in denial. Like, I was so positively optimistic that people would ask, like, are you worried about the economy? I go, I create my own economy. I don't care what happens out there. Like, oh, it's very real. Especially, I was a coach at the time. I coached entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs I coached, they were feeling the effects of the economy. And so they couldn't afford to pay me. So I lost over half of my clients in a few months, and I couldn't pay the mortgage. I started living on credit cards. In 6 months, I went from being debt free on credit cards to $52,000 in credit card debt. So like 8 or 9 grand a month is what I was charging just to pay for food and just all of my bills. And finally, I stopped paying my mortgage. I had to choose, and stopped paying the mortgage. My house was foreclosed on by the bank. It was my first house. I'd bought it a year and a half prior. I was in my, mid to late 20s, 27, 28. And, I got really depressed for the first time in my life. I applied, can't change it, but it's like life just kept getting worse and worse and worse, circumstances worse and worse, debt growing and growing. My body fat percentage tripled. I canceled my gym membership. So literally, physically, financially, mentally, and emotionally, I was at the lowest point in my life. And a series of conversations led me to listen to a Jim Rohn audio. And Jim Rohn said, your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development. And that hit me. I went, wait a minute. On a scale of 1 to 10, if you're listening to this right now, ask yourself this. On a scale of 1 to 10, what level of success do you want in every area of your life? Your health, your fitness, your finances, your relationships? Yeah. Brandon's holding up 10 fingers.
Total
right?
10. Total 10.
I've never met anyone that's like, well, I don't want to be too happy, right? Like, I want a 7. I don't want too much money. Like, no, I believe there's an innate drive and desire for human beings to fulfill their potential. It's just that most don't know how. Like, most don't know what that looks like, or what that, why am I fulfilling my potential? To what end? How do I do it? Am I capable? Right? There's all this mental and emotional baggage or hurdles that we have to overcome. And so the epiphany for me in that moment was, I want level 10 success, but what's my level of personal development? Right? Jim says your level of success won't exceed your level of personal development. And at that time in my life, I was in scarcity mode, man. I was, economy was crashed. I was just waking up and in front of my computer, making calls, trying to get clients, like just banging my head against the wall. And I wasn't taking any time. I didn't feel like I don't have time to read. I don't have time to learn. I don't have time to grow. Like, I just need to get my head to the grindstone and figure out how to make money. That was it, right? Singular focus. And then with Jim Rohn's idea, I'm like, my level of personal development is like at a 2 or a 3. So theoretically, I need to increase my level of personal development to a level 10 And then, according to Jim Rohn's philosophy, he's a pretty wise man. Yeah. My level of success will essentially parallel my level of personal development. So I ran home with this intention. I'm going to go study what do the world's most successful people do for their personal development. What are their rituals and routines? I'm going to figure out what they do. I'm going to do that. And then again, theoretically, I should grow into the person that I need to be to create the success I want in my life. And I ran home and I spent like an hour Googling, best personal development practices, rituals, routines, of millionaires and billionaires and champions and athletes and successful people and all of it. And Brandon, I was looking for one, what's the one thing that they do? Yeah. But I ended up with a list of 6 practices. And I almost threw in the towel because I was overwhelmed, right? I was like, I don't know which one of these is the best. And it depended on which article you read or which person you asked. So I'll give you a couple examples. I came across an article called Fortune 500 CEOs Who Swear by Meditation. I don't know if that's the exact name of the article, but that was the gist of it. And it was in Fortune or Forbes or whatever. And I read it, and because I always thought of meditation as more of just a spiritual, I always pictured monks in a monastery. I never pictured CEOs, that were gaining clarity on how to make $1 billion or whatever. And so I was like, after I read that article, I was sold. I'm like, dude, I got to start meditating for the clarity that it gives you and the lowering of stress. And, the ideas if it's working for them, I'll try it. And then I watched an interview with Will Smith, which this was pre Chris Rock slap, it was Ellen DeGeneres. She asked Will, you're one of the most successful, you're successful at everything you do, as an actor, as a musician, you're multi-platinum selling artist, right? How did you become successful? Because you grew up in a middle-class, family in Philly. And he said, I learned about affirmations when I was 15. He said, and I wrote my affirmations in a very unique way. I wrote them where I articulated what I wanted in my life, but then I wrote, who do I need to be and what do I need to do in order to eventually get to where I want to be in my life? And he said, I just read those every day and I lived in alignment with what I wanted, who I needed to be, and what I needed to do. And it was so simple, but so profound. I'm like, dude, I got to do affirmations. And then I came across visualization, exercise, reading, journaling. In fact, Jim Rohn, journaling was his favorite practice for personal development. So I'm looking at this list of 6 and I'm like, wow, what, I don't know which one's the best. And then the epiphany was this. I went, wait a minute. What if I woke up an hour earlier tomorrow, even though I'm not a morning person. So if you're listening, you're not a morning person, don't hang up, stick with us, because I wasn't a morning person. So I'm like, what if I woke up an hour earlier and I did all 6 of these practices? Like Robert Kiyosaki said, the 6 most timeless, proven personal development practices. I thought that would be the ultimate personal development ritual. If I did it in the morning, it would allow me to start every day at a level 10 and in a peak state. And theoretically, if I do that over the next year, that should turn my life around. I should become the person, that level 10 version of me, to create the level 10 success. And here's the thing, Brandon, at that time in my life, I was depressed. I was hopeless. I was scared. But that night I went to bed feeling like a kid on Christmas Eve. I was like, this is it. This is the one thing that could change everything. And I woke up the next morning, and the night before I had opened 6 tabs on my computer. How to meditate, because I didn't really know how to do affirmations, how to visualize, right? And I woke up the next morning and I fumbled my way through all 6 practices. I wasn't really great at them, but even after a mediocre version of that morning ritual, I felt unstoppable. I went, wow, I felt so much energy and clarity and motivation. And I was learning something new through the reading I was doing, right? And I thought, if I start every day like this, it is only a matter of time. And I was thinking of the compound effect, get 1% better every day, right? And I thought, over the next year, I'm going to give myself time. Brandon, it happened so fast, which is why I ended up calling it my miracle morning. In less than 2 months, I more than doubled my income. And I want to highlight this because this was in the middle of the 2007, 2008 recession. Right. And I want to highlight it because right now we are in the midst of, it would appear, another major recession. And so for those of you that are afraid of the recession and the impact it'll have on your income or your business, I just want to highlight this part of the story, which is the economy continued to get worse during these 2 months, but I continued to focus on how I could get better and how I could figure out how to get more clients. And I read a book called Book Yourself Solid by Michael Port, who talked about it, and I implemented his strategy and I doubled my amount of clients in the declining economy. Yeah, Book Yourself Solid by Michael Port. And then I went from being in the worst shape of my life physically, where I had not exercised in 6 months, to committing to run a 52-mile ultra marathon because I hated running. And I thought, what better way to challenge myself to grow, to be a level 10 version of me than to commit to run 52 miles when I've never run more than a mile. And that was in high school. And I hated every second of it. So I committed to run that, and I ended up completing that marathon like 5 or 6 months later. And my depression didn't take 2 months to go away. It started going away on day one, because I went from feeling hopeless to feeling optimistic, inspired, and driven to make the changes in myself that would lead to the changes in my life. And I went to my wife and I said, sweetie, I signed on 2 more clients today. In the last 2 months, because of this morning ritual, I have doubled our income. I am training for an ultra marathon, and I am the happiest and most confident I've ever been in 2 months. And she goes, I go, it feels like a miracle. She goes, it's your miracle morning. I go, I love that miracle morning. And, and the rest is kind of history, as they say. I started sharing it with my coaching clients. Almost every single one, 13 out of 14 pushed back and said, I'm not a morning person. Only one of them said, awesome. I love this. I'm a morning person. 13 out of 14 pushed back. I said, I wasn't a morning person either. Trust me. After your first day of doing this, you're going to be so lit that you're going to realize, oh, wow, this is like, I don't ever not want to start my day like this. And at the end of that, everybody came back. All my clients, they're like, Hal, I just had the best week in my sales career, where I mentioned that earlier, right? I'm reading again. I'm running. I'm this, I'm that. They were so fired up, just like I was. And I went, if this changed my life and I wasn't a morning person, and this miracle morning concept is changing all of my clients' lives, and 13 out of 14 were not morning people, I have a responsibility to share this with the world. And it took me 3 years later to, I wrote that book every day. I'm a slow writer for 3 years. And now, you mentioned translated 37 languages. We made a movie about it. I mean, and I never there was parts of me that's like this, maybe this could change the world, but I don't know how to reach the world. Like, I don't have an audience. Nobody knows who I am, but I was committed for as long as it takes. I will keep sharing this message until I reach all of humanity. And, so I always say we've reached 3 to 4 million people. That means I've got 8 billion people that I'm spending the rest of my life trying to share this message with. So I'm grateful that you're allowing me to share it here, man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's so funny. I have these decks of cards. You've probably seen these a million times. People, get these cards for people for Christmas. The card that was pulled this morning was Epictetus. And it says, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. And I heard that you mentioned the way in which Will Smith uses affirmations. What do I want to be? And what do I need to do to get what I need to be? And then I'm going to affirm that. That was such a great piece there. I was like, wow, what's serendipity that would be the card I pulled this morning. And it's interesting that I'm a big Jim Rohn fan, by the way.
Nice.
And Jim Rohn had this one particular thing that it was kind of a little bit of a rub for him. He didn't like affirmations the way that most people use them. And I wanted to see if you can help us unpack that particular part. Because there's the way of affirmations, which, I'm a homeless person. I'm saying I'm a millionaire. I'm a millionaire.
Yeah.
And so I remember Jim Rohn had this whole thing where he's like, you don't want to go around there just affirming things that are not true. It's far better to affirm the truth. In fact, in part of his speech, he said, in one of his classes, he said, it would be better to affirm I'm broke, I'm 50 years old, and I live in America. And he's like, put that on your refrigerator and see if it doesn't make you want to do something about it. Right.
I love that.
I remember, wow, so how do you see the affirmation piece? How do we do affirmations in a more effective and appropriate way?
Yeah, I love this question because affirmations are my favorite aspect of the Miracle Morning and the Savers. Like I'm often asked, Hal, do you have a favorite of the Savers? And, I always joke like the politically correct answer would be no, they're all equally important. And but no, the answer is yes, I do. And it's affirmations. And affirmations, the way that they've been taught, I think there's two problems. And you alluded to one of them. Number one is lying to yourself doesn't work. Right? Like there may be some merit that you can, if you say something over and over, you trick yourself into believing it, right? Like I do believe there is some aspect of that, the impact to your subconscious, but I don't believe that's optimal at all. Because if you say I'm a millionaire or I'm wealthy and you're financially broke, right? Your subconscious, you're creating this inauthenticity and this inner conflict that's not healthy, right? It's
there's cognitive dissonance between your reality and that statement.
Your subconscious, you go, I'm wealthy, and it's like, no, you're not, dude. You're broke, right? I'm a millionaire. You're not even a thousandaire. What are you talking about, right? And so that is not the optimal strategy. Your affirmation should be aligned with truth, and we'll get to how to do that. The second problem with affirmations is flowery passive language does not produce measurable results. So we are taught to affirm some magical outcome independent of any effort. I'm going to give you an example, Brandon. I'm sure most people have heard some version of this affirmation. I am a money magnet. Money flows to me effortlessly and in abundance. Like that might make you feel good in the moment, because if you're struggling financially and there's a lot of stress around your financial situation, but you delude yourself into thinking that you are some sort of money magnet and that money will flow to you effortlessly, right? Without you don't have to do anything. It's just going to flow into your life. What that does is it gives, the reason I think that's a popular affirmation, interestingly enough, is it gives people a false sense of relief from their money woes. Right? You check your bank balance. You're like, oh my God, I'm negative again. Okay, I'm going to do my affirmations. I'm a money magnet. Oh, that feels better. Money is going to flow to me magically, and I'm going to one day wake up wealthy. Like, oh God, that feels better than my actual reality. Right.
Right.
So you're deluding yourself. Here are, I kind of taking what Will Smith, what I learned from him. Here's how I do my affirmations. There are 3 steps, real specific. Number 1, affirm what you're committed to. So in life, we don't get what we want just because we want it. Don't affirm, I want to be a millionaire, right? And don't affirm, I am a millionaire, unless you are one. Affirm, I'm committed to becoming a millionaire, or I'm committed to increasing my income this year by 20%, or I'm committed to doubling my income this year, right? There was a year from 2004 to 2005. I committed to double my income when I was in Cutco. I was terrified. It was my last year. I'm like, I want to double my best year ever. And my best year ever took a lot of effort, right? So I broke it down, right? But I'm committed to do everything in my power to sell X amount, to double my sales, my income from this, this year, right? So I am committed. And because I was committed to do everything in my power, and I affirm that every day, I aligned my thoughts, words, and actions with that commitment. And that year, I doubled my income in the last week of the year. I hit the goal the last week of the year. The hardest week to schedule an appointment, by the way, in sales, the week between Christmas and New Year's, right? But I somehow pulled it off. But anyway, so number 1, affirm what you're committed to. And by the way, I follow these 3 steps for affirmations for every area of my life. As a parent, I am committed to blank. And there may be more, you can call those your goals, by the way. Like the goals are things you're committed to, right? I'm committed to, spending 1 hour a day with my family every morning, helping get the kids ready for school, or, I'm committed to whatever. A commitment, by the way, can be an outcome, or it can be an activity, right?
Yeah. I love process activities.
Totally. I'm a big fan of not setting goals in terms of outcomes. Like I do both. I don't believe there's a wrong or right way, and it depends on the goal. But for the most part, I used to set goals like, I want to put on 10 pounds of muscle this year, right? Now I'm committed to work out 5 days a week for 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes a day. I don't care how much muscle, I don't care. Right. I want to be healthy and strong. So therefore I'm going to do those. I don't care. My goal is I don't measure anything. I don't measure, I might step on the scale for fun, but every once in a while, I don't care. So just something to think about, right?
just really quick, one of the
please.
funniest parts of your movie is whenever you're going through your exercise routine and you're like, my wife says this is just a warm up, but it's a real workout.
Oh yeah, because
like,
I was doing the 7-minute workout. Yeah,
you're like, I had to do the 7 minutes. My wife says this is just a warm up, and I remember you saying that. I literally had a belly laugh. I was like, that is hilarious.
yeah, she teases me, but so step one, affirm what you're committed to. I am committed to blank. Right. Step two, affirm why it is a must for you. And if you're taking notes on this, and in parentheses, I would write the words deeply meaningful, right? So when I say, why is it a must for you? Well, if it's not deeply meaningful, it's probably not a must, right? So to me, those kind of go hand in hand. And I encourage you to list anywhere from 1 to, 3, 4, 5 reasons why this is a must for you. I'll give an example of these 2 steps, and then we'll get to the third one. When I had cancer, I made a commitment to maintain unwavering faith that I would beat cancer. That didn't mean I didn't experience self-doubt from time to time or fear, especially when I was sick from chemo. When you feel like shit, your mindset is usually not in an optimal place, right? So when it can be real challenging when you're physically ill. And so there was a lot of times where I felt fear, and I even thought, what if I do everything right and I still die? Like that would creep in. But I realized that didn't serve me. Fear did not serve my outcome of beating cancer and living to be, 100 years old alongside my family. So I had an affirmation that replaced fear with faith, and it followed step 1. I am committed to beating cancer and living to be 100+ years old alongside Ursula and the kids. No matter what, there is no other option. That was my step 1. I'm committed to blank. No matter what, there is no other option. And whenever I'd feel fear, I'd pull out my affirmation. I had that printed out on my bedside table. I had it on my phone as my screensaver. And it allowed me to affirm my commitment. Step 2, affirm why it's a must for you, right? Why is it deeply meaningful? My affirmation said, I will beat cancer for my mom and dad because they don't deserve to lose another child, right? They had already lost my sister when I was younger. I will beat cancer for Ursula because I promised her forever and a day. I'll beat cancer for Sophia and Halston because they need their daddy's love, leadership, and guidance. I'll beat cancer for myself because I deserve to live a long, happy, healthy life. And last but not least, I'll beat cancer for the millions of people who are themselves battling cancer or some other disease and desperately need my love, leadership, and guidance because they may not have been blessed with the resources that I have, and I'm committed to serving them in any way that I can. That list of multiple musts, multiple reasons why that were deeply meaningful, that was the fuel that I'm like, dude, I will do whatever it takes to beat this cancer. Right? Step 1, affirm the commitment. Step 2, affirmed the why. Why is this an absolute must for me? And then step 3, affirm which specific actions you'll take and when. Which specific actions you'll take and when. So for me, that was a long list. It was, I'll take 70 supplements a day. I'll do 3 coffee enemas a week. If you don't know what that is, Google it. I'll do ozone. I did ozone sauna. I did lymphatic massage. I did my miracle morning. I read books on beating cancer naturally every single day. I did 650 hours of chemotherapy. I did everything in my power. I juiced every day, everything in my power, and it was all in writing, and I affirmed it every single day. Here's what I'll say, the last piece on this. And by the way, I'm going to circle back to how to apply this to being the dad that your kids deserve, and whether or not you're married, how to be the partner that the mother of your children deserves. You could wrap all that up as how to be the family man that your family deserves. This is what I talked about at Front Row Dads Retreat. So we'll incorporate this here today. But before we get to that, I just want to say this. Think about this. When you follow this affirmations formula, you are literally articulating every day what you're committed to, reminding yourself why it's a must, and clarifying the specific actions you'll take and when you'll take them. Now your success is on you. It's simply a matter of living in alignment with your affirmations. And if you do, you can't fail. Your success is only a matter of time.
Absolutely. And I've noticed for me, like stating these things, I can recognize more easily when I'm out of alignment with that, when there's an incongruence. And then I go, this is not what I'm committed to. I'm committed to this. I have to rework this. And it's made such a big difference to be able to state that, to know that, to have that on the forefront of my mind before I start my day, and to remember that each and every day. And it's only gotten stronger within me. It's really a beautiful thing.
Well, and Brandon, let me speak on that. You make a really good point, right? I want you to think about this. Everyone deals with where you get excited about a goal, right? Like, I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to stop doing this. Right. You get excited about your goal. But then, if you don't have a pattern of living in alignment with what it takes to achieve that goal, then the odds are stacked against you.
Yep.
Right. And so we've all been there where we start a change, and then after a few days we fall off, and then one bad day turns into 2, turns into 3, turns into the year ends, and you're like, oh man, I failed at that goal again. Mm-hmm. When you do your miracle morning every day and you recite these affirmations, one bad day doesn't turn into 2. I mean, it can, but it's much less likely, because you read your affirmations the next day, you're like, I'm committed. And then you're like, dude, it makes you fully aware. I did not do this yesterday. Mm-hmm. Damn, I did not follow through. Okay, I'm not okay with that. I'm recommitting today. There is no other option. I am fully committed today. I made a mistake yesterday. I'll give myself grace, but I'm not going to let one missed day turn into 2.
Mm-hmm. I've learned over the years now, being just so invested in personal development, there's a lot of importance in commitment. I'm going to commit to X, Y, and Z. But man, what's maybe more important is recommitting, because you will find that point where that moment, push comes to shove, the life gets in front of you and you want to do something different. But yes, you have to recommit. Having the awareness of what you're committed to can make a huge difference. I want to observe our time and make sure that I'm not running you into another meeting, but I do have a couple more questions if you have time.
I've got 30 more minutes.
You're the man. All right, let's go. So I'm loving this, by the way. So good. I hope everybody on the live stream and everybody in the podcast right now is really getting a lot of gold out of this. I'm sure you are. So let's talk about this real quick. So your practical advice has helped millions around the world improve their quality of life. What do you see as the biggest hurdle for people? I know that you mentioned, for example, some people like, I'm not a morning person, which I wasn't either, by the way. I was total night owl. But this is, I've told people all the time now, no, I'm now a morning person. It's the weirdest thing. I even like to get up early on weekends, which blows my mind. I can't believe it. It's just not even me, but it truly is.
The weekends are even better. My miracle morning on the weekends, it follows the Oprah Winfrey has a quote where she said, I love waking up. And now she didn't talk about personal growth. She talked about work, but she goes, I love waking up on a Saturday morning and focusing on my work, because it doesn't come with the time pressures that are there the rest of the week. It's like, it's this liberated sense of I don't have to work, right? Like, I don't have to do this, but I love what I do. And so I actually want to spend some time this Saturday morning. So for me, my miracle morning on the weekends is like this different kind of liberated, like I'm not backing into my work day, right? I'm backing into just hanging out with the family or, doing something outside or whatever. So anyway, I do like that. Remind me of the question. I forgot.
The question is like, what's the biggest hurdle you see? Like, there's got to be, somewhat of a theme that you see people are challenged with integrating this. And what's been that?
So the biggest excuse is I'm not a morning person, right? That's that belief. In fact, when I was writing the Miracle Morning book, that really hung me up. I thought, how am I going to help people overcome a limiting belief that they have upheld and reinforced for probably their entire life since they were a kid, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm very grateful that, somebody asked me what percentage of Miracle Morning practitioners were already morning people. So this was simply them just not checking email first thing and doing the savers instead. And they said, and what percentage were not morning people, or at least they didn't think they were. So this was like a huge, they had to overcome that limiting belief. And I didn't know the answer. And so we surveyed the community, which was, probably a few 100,000 people back then. But I was kind of pleasantly surprised. 72% said that they had never been a morning person. Most had never, they had tried and failed, but never been a morning person their entire life until they read the Miracle Morning. Yeah. So I was like, I did it. Like I figured it, I figured it out. I was able to write a book that actually got people to become morning people. I want to give you a couple tips on this. Number one is understanding that it's a limiting belief. It is not black and white as who you are or not, right? Like, for example, I thought I wasn't a runner. You know, if you would have ever brought up running to me, I'm like, dude, I'm not a runner. Like, nope, don't run. Don't like running. Can't stand running. I get sore about, 2 minutes into a run. Like, no, thank you. But I committed to run this 52-mile ultra marathon, and part of it was raising money for a charity. And I made it public because I wanted accountability. I thought if I announced I just used Facebook back then. Like, I announced to all my Facebook fans and followers and friends and whatever, guys, I'm running this ultra marathon on this date to raise money for charity. I thought, if I don't follow through now, boy, do I look like a schmuck, right?
Right.
You know, I think somebody's going to ask, hey, how'd that ultra marathon go to raise money for that charity? And I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't do it. So anyway, the point is, I bought a book on how to train for a marathon, and I started training. And what happened was this. I realized, I wasn't a runner because I didn't run. When I started running, putting one foot in front of the other, half a mile on day one, and maybe half a mile on day two, and then maybe a mile, but with some walking involved, right? It was like really easing into it. But all of a sudden, after a week or so, I'm like, dude, I actually feel good running. This is actually, I kind of like it. Weird, right? So if you don't run, you're not a runner. If you don't wake up and have a morning routine, you're not a morning person. But if you want to transform your life, right, and you commit to, okay, I'm going to try this miracle morning thing for 30 days, you're going to be blown away that you're going to join millions of people that have gone from I'm not a morning person to, oh my gosh, I would never trade this, I would never not do this morning routine, because it allows me to start every day in a peak physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual state as the best version of myself, so that I can be the most effective at every aspect of my life. Miracle Morning helps you be a better parent, a better, entrepreneur, a better human. I mean, you name it. You're more intentional in everything that you do. So I'll give one logistical tip. So first and foremost, you have to realize it's a limiting belief. I can overcome it. Easy, done. Okay, I'm committed. I'll do that. In the book, in the Miracle Morning book, there's a chapter called The 5-Step Snooze-Proof Wake-Up Strategy for the Recovering Snoozeaholics. It's the longest chapter title ever, but the chapter is like 3 pages. The chapter title is almost longer than the chapter, but anyway, I'm going to give you guys a couple of these steps. Okay, so a miracle morning starts the night before with the intentions you set before bed, right? If you think about like when you were a kid, if you celebrated Christmas, for example, and if you didn't celebrate Christmas, think about like your first day of school or going on a vacation and leaving early in the morning to go on a road trip, right? Think about any morning in your life when you were excited, like you couldn't wait to wake up the next morning because of whatever you had planned for the morning, right? Christmas, vacation, school. Was it hard? I'll ask you, Brandon. It's a rhetorical question, but let's play along here. On Christmas Eve or whatever, was it hard to wake up the next morning on those days you were excited for the morning?
No, it was hard to stay in bed.
Yeah, right. And even if you got poor sleep, which you probably did because you were tossing and turning, you'd wake up at 2 a.m., look at the clock. Nope, dang it, it's not time to wake up yet. Fall back asleep, wake up again, it's 3:25. Nope, dang it. Right, so you got like interrupted sleep, but you woke up with energy and enthusiasm for the day. And when I was practicing my miracle morning and writing the book, I had a theory. I thought, well, wait a minute. What is stopping us from creating that experience every single day of our lives? Waking up like it's Christmas morning every single day of our lives. What's stopping us? And I go, well, let me reverse engineer it. What causes that? What causes that is we go to bed with a clear intention of what the morning is going to be like. Right? If you're a kid, I'm going to wake up, run in the other room, in the living room, see the Christmas tree, open the presents. Right. We create that intention before we go to sleep. So I started experimenting with, I'm going to create an intention every night, no matter how many hours of sleep I'm getting, that I'm getting the perfect amount of sleep for my body to feel rested and rejuvenated. Mm-hmm. And that when the alarm goes off, I'm going to wake up with so much energy. I'm going to be excited, right? Enthusiastic. And I actually created a written bedtime affirmation that sits on my bedtime nightstand, and I read it every night before bed. In fact, you can download that if you go to what's the URL? TMM book, TMM like the Miracle Morning, tmmbook.com. That's all the bonuses that you're supposed to buy the book first and read the book and get the bonuses, right? But whatever, those bonuses have the bedtime affirmations in them, so you could print them off and put them on the bedside table. And what I realize is that, think about this. If you're listening, your first thought and feeling in the morning is almost always the same as your last thought and feeling before you went to bed. Most of us go to bed kind of resisting the morning. Oh God, I got to wake up in 6 hours and I got to deal with this stressful thing in my life, work, blah, blah, blah. So we go to bed thinking about things that we're stressed about, feeling stressed. And as soon as we wake up, our first thought is, oh God, it's Tuesday. I've got that report due today. We end our day in a suboptimal mental and emotional state, and we begin our day in that exact same state. Mm-hmm. That is not ideal, folks. Mm-hmm. So instead, it's before bed, set a very clear intention of how you're going to wake up, what you're going to think, and how you're going to feel when you wake up in the morning. And then when your eyes open, that becomes your reality. You wake up excited. Mm-hmm. So that's my first tip for you. Set your intention before bed to wake up in a peak mental and emotional state and physical state, right? Next step, and this is one of, if not the most important, move your alarm clock across the room as far as humanly possible.
Yes, this is a very helpful tip.
This is a crucial. I was a CEO was introducing me at a CEO conference one time, and he said, I hope Hal tells you about this. In case he doesn't, I've got to tell you, because this was my game changer. I've never been a morning person. He said, I took Hal's tip of setting the alarm clock across the room. And the point is, if you can reach over and turn your alarm clock off in the morning, you're going to do it without even waking up all the way. You're going to go right back to sleep. And you can snooze 3-4 times before you finally go, oh shit, I'm late now. When the alarm clock's across the room, I keep mine on my bathroom counter next to a glass of water that I pour the night before.
Yes.
So that I can rehydrate first thing, brush my teeth, wash my face, good on with my day. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. When you have to get out of bed and walk across the room to turn off the alarm, you're 5 to 10 times more alert and awake than you are if you're reaching over to the nightstand to turn off the alarm.
Yes.
So those are two of the most important of those 5 steps that's the game changer. Like, you got to take care of the mental, which is that intention before bed, and the logistical, which is moving the alarm clock across the room.
It's so remarkable how almost like magic, that thing that you're talking about, setting that intention before bed, I will get the perfect amount of sleep. I will feel rested, rejuvenated, etc. It's weird how that works. I mean, it really, 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 really works. And yes, moving it across the room. I also like to pull all my blinds open, even though I'm waking up before the sunrise. As that sunrise is coming through the room, I wake up even more. And also always have my glass of water sitting next to my phone, ready to go. I even took the Dave Asprey hint there on putting a little bit of salt.
Lemon and salt.
Yep, a little bit of lemon and salt in them. And that's a great way to help flush the body, get you rehydrated. So good. So good. Okay. So let's move into some dad stuff real quick. You're a father of 2 beautiful children. What do you believe are the keys to being just a great dad?
Yeah. So a couple things. I'm going to start with the wife, actually, or the mother of your, again, you may not be married, right? But your children have a mother. Here's the thing. You can't control the type of dad that you had, right? But you have 100% control of the type of dad that your kids have. And you can't control the way your dad treated your mother, but you have 100% control over the way you treat the mother of your children. And here's what I realized for me. I had a breakthrough in my marriage in 2016, right before I got cancer. And thank God I did, because, we were in a really tough place. My wife and I had just moved to Texas. For whatever reason, she wasn't able to come out when I went and shopping for our house. And so I picked out the house and sent her pictures on Zillow, which always looked different than the house in person. When she actually flew out to Texas to see our new house that we owned, she did not like it at all. No. Yeah. And so we already were at a stressful point in our marriage. Now I have a wife that's waking up in a house that I picked out for her that she does not like, that she does not feel good in. And I think you've probably been there. Like, I mean, most marriages, you go through ups and downs. I like to think of my marriage as like a stock, where if you look at like the stock market, where it's always trending up, right? But it goes up, 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 then it goes down, up, up, up. And you hope that the next peak is higher than the previous.
Right.
And you hope that the next down is not as low as the previous, right? Mm-hmm. Although sometimes it can be the lowest it's ever been, right? You might be 7 years into your marriage and you're bottoming out to the point where that's where a lot of people, they throw in the towel and get a divorce, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel like for my wife and I, every difficult period we've been through, we evolve as a couple and we become stronger on the other side of it, right? The stock rises higher. Well,
it's a great
2016,
analogy.
we were in a downward spiral, fighting, triggering each other. I was a workaholic. Miracle Morning had taken off. I was working 60 to 80 hours a week, loving every minute of it, deluding myself into saying my kids were my highest priority. It's like, well, then how come your schedule doesn't reflect that? You're traveling a hell of a lot for someone that says the kids are the top priority to speak and share your message. You're taking weekends to work because you got another book in the hop, right? I was not in alignment with what I said was my highest priority. And my wife and I got in a huge blowout fight before we were going to go camping. And I think it was probably, I don't know if it was her or me, but I said, just go camping without me. Right. And honestly, I was so deluded into work being my real highest priority that I was like, this is great. My daughter was 7 at the time. My son was 4. And I'm like, dude, I'm getting a week at home to work. This is awesome. I'm going to get so much work done. And plus I was, my wife and I were mad. So I'm like, and I need a break from her anyway. Right.
Right.
And while she was gone, I read an article called Choose Her Every Day or Leave Her. It's by Brian Reeves. And I believe I actually just connected with him the other day for the first time ever. I don't know if the book is out yet. Just Google Choose Her Every Day. Because he just got a publisher had him write a book on it. But that article was read probably millions of times. Anyway, so I read the article and it basically made me realize that I was in what I call a reciprocal relationship, meaning that was the biggest challenge, that I reciprocated my wife's moods and energy. If she was sweet to me, I naturally felt like being sweet back to her. But if she was in a mood, if she was upset, if she was angry, if she was rude, well, then I naturally felt justified in reciprocating that energy. How dare you talk to me that way? Screw you, right? Mm-hmm. And I realized that a reciprocal relationship is most couples' downfall. I realized that I was giving away my power. I wasn't choosing how to show up to my relationship every day. Mm-hmm. I was at the mercy of my wife's moods. And I realized that is not ideal. That is not healthy. And so what I did, and this is the single greatest move I've ever made as a husband and as a father. I did it as a husband first, and then I modeled it for being a father. It was really simple. I realized I need to articulate the type of husband I'm committed to being unwaveringly, no matter how she is in any given day. What qualities am I committed to embodying? Qualities like patience and empathy and love and strength. I need to articulate that in writing, and I need to affirm it every single day and then live in alignment with it, right? You see a little pattern here of using, what we've already talked about, but specifically for my wife. And then here was a very important distinction, Brandon. In order to remove myself from that reciprocal relationship, which is a pattern that we get into, which is why relationships are usually either going great or they're going bad, right? Because reciprocation starts to spiral out of control.
Right.
And so I wrote in my affirmations, once I articulated who I was committed to being as a husband, the type of husband, the qualities, the characteristics, I made sure to clarify no matter what. Meaning I wrote down, if my wife, when she's having a bad day and she's taking it out on me, whereas in the past, I would have felt justified in reciprocating that energy, no more is that okay. In fact, I wrote down the worse her mood is, the worst she is treating me, the harder I have to be, the better I have to be for her. If she's having a tough day and taking it out on me, if, as a good husband, I need to be even more patient. I need to be even more empathetic. I need to be even less triggered or not triggered at all. And so I then pulled out my ego a little bit and I went, I'm taking this on as a challenge. This is a self-mastery challenge. And part of it was identifying that the things I let my wife up, the things my wife does that upset me, that I think are about her. God, when she nags me, I can't stand it. And it's her fault for nagging me. I realized, no, that's a weakness of mine. I can't handle her nagging me. I have no control over my emotions in that situation. And I don't know about you who's listening, but I would imagine I don't want my emotional state to be at the mercy of other people or outside forces in any way. That's Absolutely. The one thing that we have control over is our inner experience. We may not be able to control the outer experience all the time. We can control the inner experience. And so that's it, Brandon. I affirmed this is who I'm committed to being as a husband. And I got real specific in the qualities, the characteristics, and how I would implement them based on our unique dynamic with my wife and how she responds to things and so on and so forth. I made sure to clarify that if she doesn't respond the way I would like her to, because I realize this is going to take a while for her to, just because I show up differently on day one, we have patterns that she's going to be dealing with. And the thing is, I didn't want to tell her I'm going to change, because in the past I've maybe said I was going to change and then I didn't follow through after a few days. I'll do the dishes from now on, sweetie. Then 4 days later, I'm like, why the hell did I commit to the dishes? I'm not doing these anymore. This is BS. I should be working, right? So I'm like, I don't want to tell her. I just want to show her. I just want to be it. And then I wrote down, I will be patient for as long as it takes. And I'm going to really pay attention to how she reciprocates my newfound energy in our relationship. And it was July of 2016 when I did this. And I wrote down that for the rest of the year, I'm going to really pay attention. And then I'm going to evaluate, how is this approach working, looking back over the last 6 months. And Brian, within a matter of weeks, she started to reciprocate that energy. For sure, it took a while, but I started to notice a change and it shifted our relationship. And now we are the best we've ever been. We literally are, after, been together for 18 years together, 13 years married. And it's funny, the other day I said, while we were in the morning, I went in, I go, sweetie, I feel like we are at a different level of consciousness as a couple. I feel like we're meta now, where we're able to see what each of us are doing and talk about it from this meta perspective where, we can talk about, hey, I was triggered and I'm sorry. And, I go, I feel like we're the best we've ever been. She goes, it only took us 18 years, but I agree with you, and then I applied that same strategy to what kind of dad am I committed to being for my daughter and for my son. And I separated. I've done both under one umbrella, but I also separated them because my daughter and I have a very distinct, unique relationship, and she has different needs than my son does. So taking this approach, taking the affirmation strategies I've taught today, incorporating them in your miracle morning, and simply articulating, this is how I'm committed to showing up for my family, no matter what, there is no other option. And then reaffirming that every morning during your miracle morning. Now it's simply a matter of you living in alignment with what it is that you're affirming.
Man, that's so good. I want to get to another question because we only have so much more time. What's the next, or I'm sorry, how do you believe this role as a father and this tear between, obviously you have a lot of speaking engagements, you have all these things, and so many of us feel this burden. I even polled my group the other day and asked them, what's the biggest obstacle for you being the father you want to be? And I would say 80 to 90% of them said time, managing the time. And you've got all these priorities business-wise and stuff like that. How have you, and you even stated that you had this out of alignment before, how did you reorient yourself to making the time for your family and making that priority? Because obviously we have to work, generally speaking, more often than we have that free time. We have to serve and bring value and do all these things so that we can support our family. And so many guys are struggling with this, but how did you reorient yourself and create your family as a priority, business second, much like John Vroman, which I think is just such a beautiful way. You're a family man with a business, not a businessman with a family. Yeah. Tell me about that. How did you reorient yourself to your family?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. One is realizing that it's not about time for time. This was a big paradigm shift where I'm like, if I am my family's really my highest priority, shouldn't I be spending more hours with them every day than I am on my work? Right. But I'm like that, I can't reconcile that, I got to work. So it's really about quality of connection, versus the amount of time. And there is, or you can call it quality time, right? But here's what I mean. So here's what I did logistically. I realized, okay, if my kids are my highest priority, I may not be able to spend more time with them every day than I do on work. However, I will bookend my days with my children. So I will wake them up and I will put them to bed. And every morning I started waking my kids up with a puppet show. So that's where we ended up landing. At first, it was a back massage and just positive affirmations like, hey, buddy, time to get up for school. You're a champion. I would just like embed in their subconscious when they're in that alpha state. I would say, Dad and Mom love you so much. You can do anything, right? Because their brain is in that receptive state where it's actually the subconscious is absorbing. So I'm massaging their back. It's a pleasant way to wake up while I'm gently telling them how amazing they are, how loved they are, really embedding things in their subconscious that I wanted them to embody. And then once they are awake, it just happened one day. I like grabbed stuffed animals and I did 2 funny voices with these 2 stuffed animals. It was, and then they loved it. So then they begged for it. Right. So again, it depends on the age of your kids, right? They were, 4 or 5 and 8 at the time. And so I did that. So I woke them up every morning. Then I spent the first hour after that next hour, basically that hour from 7 to 8 a.m. It was, I wake the kids up and then I help the family get ready for school. It used to be where I delegated that to my wife, right? So before all of this, it was like, I would do my miracle morning, then I would go to work and she would get the kids ready for school. She'd wake them up, get them ready, take them to school. I'd be like, bye kids. That was it. No quality of connection. I wanted quality of connection. So every morning, 1 hour in the morning, woke them up and spent that first hour helping lunches. It's also scoring points with my wife, right? Like totally. So helping her, so she feels good about it. So it's helping our marriage as well, that Dad's here. I'm not on my own. He's helping. So that was the first part. Then I started picking the kids up from school every day. And again, not something I used to do. It was like, that was all wife. All kid stuff was delegated to the wife. And I realized I was missing hearing the stories of how did school go today, my chance to give some advice or influence or listen or whatever. So I added that in. And then I started putting the kids to bed, reading them stories every night before bed. So that was how I integrated it. Another aspect is I have a rule. I'm not allowed to read a business book until I've read a book on marriage or parenting in the morning, and even just 5 pages out of a marriage or parenting book. But it's a self-imposed rule that reminds me, yes, family is actually your number one priority. You're not even allowed to get to the business books. And it's amazing when you read books on parenting or marriage, just like business, you get one idea and you're like, oh my God, boom, paradigm shift. Like, this is amazing, right? So you can't help but be a better family man if you are every day investing some of your personal development time into learning how to be a better husband, a better father, so on and so forth. So those are the 2 big ones.
What a golden nugget there. I love that. Make sure to put, if it is your priority, then even down to your reading, are you putting the parenting and marriage part in front of your business learning? Wow, that's so good. Something that I'm now going to integrate because I haven't done that. And I absolutely love that. So many beautiful things you share with us today. I want to ask you a question. What's next for you personally and professionally? And how can we support you in reaching that vision?
Oh, I appreciate that, man. Thank you. So the Miracle Morning, I feel it's the greatest value I've ever added to the world. Like I've never, both in terms of how wide it spread it is, millions of people, but in terms of the depth, right? Like I have emails from people saying this saved my marriage. This got me off my depression medication. This doubled my income, right? Like, and they attribute it to the Miracle Morning. So because of that, until further notice, like that is my mission. My mission is to elevate the consciousness of humanity one morning at a time and just keep sharing the Miracle Morning. And so to do that, the Miracle Morning book, of course, is like that's the foundation, but now we have a Miracle Morning documentary. And by the way, all of this is available at miraclemorning.com. So everything I'm about to share, miraclemorning.com is the hub, but there's the book. There's also over a dozen books in the Miracle Morning series, including the Miracle Morning for parents and families and the Miracle Morning for couples. So if you want more parenting advice, the Miracle Morning for parents and families is written by this amazing couple that does the Miracle Morning as a family every day. It's phenomenal. And then they have an accompanying playbook that teaches you 7 activities to do with your family. So the Miracle Morning for parents and families, the movie, of course, the documentary, which was halfway through, I got cancer. And I called my director and said, hey, the movie's on hold. And he said, no, it's not. You're going to beat cancer. I'm going to film you beating cancer. And we're going to make that part of the movie so you can inspire people to beat cancer. I was like, okay. So we did that. And then the Miracle Morning app, I'm excited about this. It's a free app. And we're about to launch a subscription version with over 100 guided tracks. So I encourage everybody, download the free app. It's on Apple and Android. And then I think in about 2 weeks from today, so I don't know when this comes out exactly, but there'll be an option where you can do a monthly membership and you'll get new, kind of like Calm and Headspace. The difference is each of the tracks goes through the different savers. So it's not just a meditation app. It's not just an affirmations app. It's not just a visualization app. It's not just a reading app. It's not just a journaling app. It's all of it, all combined. Some tracks have 1 or 2, some tracks have all 6 or anywhere in between. So the Miracle Morning app. And so these are all just tools that we're trying to get, free tools. The book is not free, but the movie's free, the app is free. And it's just trying to get the Miracle Morning into the minds of as many people and the lives of as many people as I possibly can.
Wonderful, man. And guys, I'm serious. If you are looking for something to help your life, if you're looking to improve your marriage, if you're looking to improve the quality of your work, your entrepreneurship, or anything, I really am telling you, this is a personal testimony. This stuff works. Also, if you're thinking about a great gift for your loved ones, maybe you're thinking about something that could help somebody who's struggling right now with cancer, or somebody who's struggling with their emotions or something, think about the Miracle Morning, because it is a miracle book. Hal Elrod, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I'm super appreciative. This has been amazing, and I can't wait to do more with you in the future.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you for the work that you're doing helping dads, man. I appreciate that so much.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to go ahead and stop the live. Thank you, guys. And we'll see you in the next episode.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you've received some value from it, please share it with other dads and consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll see you in the next episode. Looking for support with your fatherhood journey? Go to bedadly.com and take our Dadly Disposition quiz and learn helpful insights on how you can overcome power struggles with your kids.